The Galactic Council had always considered itself eternal. For centuries it stood as the ruling body of interstellar civilization, dictating laws, resolving conflicts, and shaping the destiny of countless species. Yet, as the years passed after humanity's quiet departure, its once imposing presence crumbled into something frail and uncertain. The chamber on Nalthor Prime reflected this decay. Where once every seat was filled with proud delegates, now vast arcs of the auditorium stood empty. Banners of absent species had been torn down. Even the luminous crystal dome, engineered to reflect the starfield of the galaxy above, had grown dim, flickering like a failing memory. It had not happened all at once. At first, the Council carried on as if nothing had changed, insisting humanity's absence was inconsequential. But consequences accumulated. Patrol fleets once bolstered by Terran engineering struggled to maintain order. Trade convoys became vulnerable to raiders. Border skirmishes erupted where human mediation had once kept tensions in check, one by one. Smaller member species began slipping away. Some left openly, declaring the Council irrelevant. Others simply stopped sending envoys, withdrawing into isolation. Growing numbers sought refuge in partnership with humanity instead, species who had been dismissed by the Council but were welcomed. As equals by the Terran Republic, the contrast was glaring. While the Council withered, humanity thrived. On the Outer Rim, Terran colonies grew into bustling centers of innovation and culture. Human-built starships protected not only their own worlds, but those of their allies, ensuring safe passage and fair trade. Where the Council had ruled by decree, humanity led by cooperation, the galaxy noticed. It was this shifting balance that forced the Council at last to confront reality. They convened an emergency session, and for weeks the chamber echoed with desperate debate. Some factions demanded war, insisting humanity's defiance be crushed. Others, more pragmatic, argued for reconciliation. In the end, pride bent under necessity. A grand delegation was formed to extend an olive branch. They traveled to Sol, bearing promises of reform, equality, and shared governance. It was, by Council standards, the most generous offer ever drafted. They expected resistance, negotiation, perhaps even cautious acceptance. What they found instead was silence. Their ships docked at Earth's orbiting station. But no reception awaited them. Automated systems guided their delegation through empty corridors, sterile and efficient. No banners, no welcoming committee, only the quiet hum of machinery. At last, they were led into a vast chamber. Its walls of steel and glass gleamed, but it was devoid of life. No human envoy stood before them. No table was prepared for discussion. Instead, a single message glowed across the walls in bold script. We asked for respect. You gave us chains. We are free now. And freedom does not walk back into cages. That was all. No argument. No conditions. No second chance. The delegation lingered, as if unwilling to believe the finality of it. But the station remained empty, unyielding in its silence. Eventually, they returned to their ships and departed, carrying back not a treaty, but a statement of rejection. When they reported to the chamber, their words cast a pall heavier than any war defeat. The Council had reached out, and humanity had turned them away, not with threats, not with hostility, but with indifference. The meaning was worse than open defiance. Humanity no longer needed them. The chamber fell into bitter paralysis. The Vrusk shouted for retaliation, but their fleets were fractured. The Avery urged negotiation, but their pleas were drowned in mockery. Lesser species sat silent, knowing no action could reverse what had been lost. Beneath all posturing, every delegate understood the truth: the age of the Council was over. Regret settled in like a disease. Delegates remembered the jeers, the dismissals, the arrogance with which they had silenced humanity's pleas for equality. They remembered the quiet dignity of Alina Markov as she placed Earth's insignia on the chamber floor and walked away. In hindsight, they saw the moment for what it was, the beginning of the end. Now, that end had arrived. The Council still existed, but it was no longer the heart of the galaxy. That role belonged to humanity and its allies, who had built something stronger from the ashes of neglect. Historians would one day call humanity's departure the true turning point of galactic history. But for those who still sat in the hollowed chamber, surrounded by empty seats and dimming lights, there was only one truth left to repeat to themselves in sleepless nights. They had driven humanity away, and all that remained was regret. Word count: approximately 710. Do you want me to now craft 5 cinematic image prompts, one per part, to visually capture the whole arc of this HFY story? The Council wasted no time. Within hours of Ambassador Rain's shocking broadcast, entire fleets were dispatched towards Sol. They would expose the bluff, tear away the veil of human arrogance, and present the galaxy with proof that Earth still sat quietly in its orbit, powerless beneath the weight of exile. But when the first ships arrived, their commanders found themselves gripped, not by triumph, but by silence at a distance. The Sol system looked ordinary: stars glittering, planets circling their parent sun. Mars gleamed in its rusty orbit, and the icy specks of Jupiter's moons still shimmered in pale reflected light. But when the probes drew near Earth's orbit, they discovered a sight that made even battle-hardened admirals go still. Earth was gone. Its orbital track was empty, save for a great sphere of fractured, shimmering light. It wasn't debris, nor the scar of destruction. It was a void, a distortion, as though reality itself had been folded in upon itself. The fleets fanned out, their sensors probing desperately. They scanned for gravitational anomalies, for remnants of tectonic mass, for atmosphere lingering in the void. Nothing. Not a fragment of crust. Not a trace of ocean. Not a single stray molecule of air. Earth, the cradle of humanity, had simply been removed. The moon remained, scarred by ancient craters, circling emptily around nothing. Its orbit faltered, tugged by an absence that once anchored it. Without Earth's stabilizing pull, it would eventually spiral free. A lonely relic adrift in Sol, the admirals conferred in disbelief. Could the humans have destroyed their own world to deny the Concord control? No. There was no radiation signature, no planetary remnants, no planetary core. This was not destruction, it was relocation. And relocation was something no known civilization could achieve. As the Concord fleets expanded their sweep, they discovered more impossibilities. Mars was abandoned. The cities that had once dotted its surface, domes glowing in the faint light, were gone. Not destroyed, not shattered, simply dismantled. Where bustling colonies had once drawn power from fusion plants, now only smooth craters of polished stone remained, as though the structures had been unbuilt with surgical precision. The asteroid belts, once alive with human mining stations, lay silent. Docking arrays that should have hummed with traffic were barren. Automated defense drones had been disabled, their power cells stripped. Even the massive orbital shipyards above Jupiter were gone, dismantled so thoroughly that the space around them was pristine. No debris fields, no drifting wreckage. It was as if humanity had scoured the entire system clean of itself. Every outpost, every station, every habitat dash erased. Then came the chilling realization: this had not been done in haste. This had been orchestrated over decades, perhaps longer. Humanity had hidden their preparations beneath layers of misdirection, trade, and diplomacy. While the galaxy watched them argue in council chambers, they had quietly packed their bags and left. Word of the disappearance spread like wildfire. By the time the second wave of Concord ships confirmed the findings, whispers were already rippling through the galaxy. They exiled Earth. But Earth had already exiled itself. Fear soon followed. If humans could relocate their own cradle world without anyone noticing, what else could they do? Had they built secret fleets hidden in dark space? Had they carved out new colonies beyond the edges of the galactic disk? If they could move planets, could they also move stars? For the first time in living memory, the elder species of the Concord found themselves staring at a puzzle they could not solve. The Varnari, who prided themselves on millennia of astroengineering, admitted such an act was beyond even their mastery. The Tyreek Dominion, masters of energy manipulation, whispered that the power required exceeded the output of 100 suns. Yet humanity had done it. The shockwaves, not only technological, but cultural. The galaxy had believed humanity reckless, impulsive, too brash to wield power responsibly. Yet here was evidence of coordination on a scale that demanded patience, secrecy, and brilliance. It was not recklessness. It was audacity married to discipline. Inside the council chambers, panic replaced smugness. The Zelther delegate, who had once declared humanity an infection, now found himself speechless. The chancellor, who had raised the gavel, never finished his decree. Instead, the council scrambled for explanations, each more desperate than the last. Some called it a trick, insisting the humans had cloaked Earth behind illusions. But every probe reported the same results. There was nothing there to cloak. Others suggested humanity had hidden the planet in subspace, but even that technology was far beyond the limits of possibility. The truth stared them in the face. Earth had been taken somewhere else. Where? No one knew. And that unknowing gnawed at them far more than the Vought. In the weeks following the discovery of Earth's disappearance, the Concord found itself scrambling in confusion. The exile decree that had seemed so decisive now lay hollow. They had exiled a people who had already vanished. But as fleets searched deeper, fragments of humanity's departure began to surface. They weren't random, nor were they accidents. They were deliberate breadcrumbs left scattered across the galaxy like a trail of whispered defiance. The first clue appeared along an abandoned merchant corridor. A convoy of automated freighters drifted silently between uncharted stars. When Concord patrols intercepted them, they expected to find cargo. Instead, they discovered the holds completely stripped, the freighters rigged to self-destruct if tampered with. Before one vessel detonated, it transmitted a final message across every channel. "We carry nothing but memories. Our path is no longer yours." The words rippled across news nets and military feeds, sparking both outrage and awe. More signs followed. On the barren moon of Arcanine, a mining collective uncovered a strange scar across the surface, carved into the regolith by a beam of intense plasma. The scar wasn't random. It was writing massive glyphs large enough to be read from orbit. When translated, the message was chilling in its simplicity. "To those who sought to cast us out, thank you. You gave us the push we needed." It was not apology nor a plea. It was gratitude sharpened into a blade. Elsewhere, explorers found abandoned relay stations that still pulsed faint signals into the void. When accessed, they didn't transmit coordinates or tactical data. Instead, they played recording snippets of human life preserved like artifacts. Laughter in a crowded cafe. The thrum of music blending old Earth instruments with alien sounds. The voices of children reciting stories about the stars. And finally, each recording ended with the same phrase, whispered in 100 voices, "We walk our own path." For many species, the recordings carried an almost haunting resonance. They had voted to exile a people who clearly did not feel exiled at all. Humanity had not begged for belonging. They had chosen independence with a kind of bold serenity. The Concord grew desperate for answers. Intelligence agencies interrogated the smaller nations who had allied with humanity. But even those allies, such as the Karu Confederacy and the small merchant guilds of the Rim, knew nothing of the grand plan. They admitted humanity had traded fiercely and innovated wildly. But none had guessed that behind every shipment, every colony, every expedition, the humans had been building an escape route, and that was what terrified. The Council most this was not a panicked flight in the face of exile. This was not a people scattering to the winds, desperate to find refuge. No, this was order. This was coordination. The removal of Earth, the dismantling of colonies, the vanishing of fleets that all spoke of a civilization that had quietly, methodically prepared for decades, perhaps centuries. Some began to speculate on their destination. Could humanity have sought sanctuary beyond the galactic rim, in the great void between galaxies? Could they have discovered ancient wormhole networks, shortcuts predating the Concord itself? Or perhaps they had simply vanished into the dark matter currents. carving out homes in places no one dared to explore. Every answer raised more questions. Every question raised more fear, and still the signs of their departure appeared. A derelict satellite near the Terex cluster carried a parting message encoded in simple binary. "You will not find us." "Stop searching." The words unsettled the admirals who read them. It wasn't defiance alone. It was warning. For the first time in millennia, the elder races of the Concord felt small. Their power, their fleets, their sprawling dominions all had been built on the assumption that they could see and control everything within the galaxy. Humanity had shattered that assumption. They had vanished into places the Concord could not follow. The whispers grew in the outer worlds. Some called humanity cowards, unwilling to face judgment. Others called them visionaries, walking into the unknown while the rest of the galaxy squabbled over decrees and rules. But one whisper spread louder than the rest. They did not leave because they were cast out. They left because they outgrew us. That whisper unsettled the council more than anything. Because deep down, they feared it might be true. For if humanity had built a new home beyond the council's reach, if they had carried their flame into the vast unknown, then what would become of the galaxy when that flame returned, brighter and fiercer than before? The council had exiled humanity. But the traces humanity left behind suggested something far more terrifying. Humanity had not been cast away at first. The Concord celebrated humanity's disappearance. Some delegates called it a victory, proof that the council's authority still carried weight. They believed that without humanity's disruptive presence, order would return, markets would stabilize, and diplomacy would regain its proper balance. But the galaxy quickly discovered what it meant to live without humans. The first cracks appeared in commerce. For decades, human freighters had been the lifeblood of dangerous routes, the kind of sectors where nebulous storms raged. Pirates thrived, and navigation was treacherous. Where other species avoided risk, humans embraced it, forging trade lanes through hostile space and connecting distant economies. Now, without them, whole sectors fell into scarcity. Colonies starved. Materials critical to starship construction dried up. The great markets of the Concord dimmed, their once vibrant flows of goods sputtering. Piracy surged. No other species matched humanity's dogged reputation for escort duty. Terran privateers had once been a terror to raiders, striking with cunning ambushes and refusing to yield even when outnumbered. Now raiders plundered unchallenged. The council deployed fleets, but they were too slow, too rigid, and too cautious. Admirals who had once sneered at humanity's reckless bravery now discovered how effective that bravery had been at keeping lawless chaos in check. Science, too, began to falter. Though young on the galactic stage, humanity had already altered entire disciplines with their willingness to experiment. They had challenged doctrines that had stood for centuries. In genetics, they pioneered treatments that helped weaker species survive harsh environments. In physics, they unearthed dangerous but revolutionary theories. Their approach had always been called reckless, till it was gone. Now, symposiums dragged on without their voices, the same old theories repeated endlessly. Innovation slowed. Progress dulled. The absence was cultural as much as practical. Festivals that had once drawn human musicians, artists, and storytellers felt strangely hollow. Humans had a way of throwing themselves into alien traditions with full-hearted joy, often blending them with their own. That fusion had birthed new dances, new cuisines, even new philosophies. Without them, galactic culture grew colder, more rigid. Like a machine grinding on without oil. But the most dangerous vacuum was in warfare. For centuries, rival empires had held their ambitions in check, wary of what humanity might do if war erupted. Not because humans had the largest fleets they did not. Not because they had the oldest weapons they did not. But because humans fought differently, where other species calculated odds and retreated when unfavorable. Humans pushed forward with stubborn willpower, their losses somehow fueling their ferocity. It was said across the Concord, if humans entered a war, it would never be clean, never be quick. Now that deterrence was gone. Old grudges resurfaced. Borders that had long remained quiet erupted in skirmishes. Without humanity's balancing presence, power blocks tested each other openly. The council chambers rang with complaints, disputes, and emergency pleas for arbitration. The chancellor, once so confident in declaring Earth's exile, now presided over a body spiraling into instability. The irony was bitter. The very species they had feared as destabilizing had been the glue holding the galaxy together. And as the years passed, regret seeped into even the proudest empires. The Varnari, who had called humanity a reckless flame, quietly admitted that their own engineers had fallen behind without Terran innovations to challenge them. The Zelthor, once loudest in condemning Earth, found their sectors overrun by piracy that their disciplined fleets could not contain. Even the Quarren Chancellor, who had raised the gavel to pass the exile, grew silent whenever humanity's name arose. The galaxy began to understand. They had not rid themselves of danger. They had stripped themselves of vitality. Humanity's recklessness had been creativity. Their stubbornness had been deterrence. Their chaos had been balanced in taverns and marketplaces. Whispers turned to laments. We drove away the only ones who dared to dream. Some even began to question whether exile had ever been a punishment at all. The more they studied the traces humanity had left, the messages, the abandoned stations, the careful dismantling of their own system, the clearer it became. Humanity hadn't been forced out. They had chosen their departure, leaving the galaxy not in shame, but in defiance, and worse, in freedom. Years passed, but the wound humanity left behind never healed. Trade remained fractured. Pirate empires grew bold. Old rivalries turned into open wars, and the Concord's authority waned with every cycle. The exile of Earth had not restored order. It had done the opposite. Still, the Council clung to one hope, that humanity might be found. Fleets scoured border regions. Probes were sent into the void. Even forbidden sectors and charted nebulae, collapsed wormholes, and unstable dark space corridors were searched in desperation. Yet every mission ended the same way, empty-handed. Humanity had left no trail, at least none the Concord could follow. And then, one day without warning, the signal came. It did not arrive on standard channels. It was not routed through Concord relays. Instead, it slipped into every communication band simultaneously, as if the very fabric of space had carried it. Civilian networks, military command lines, even personal consoles all flickered with the same image. The chamber of the Grand Council fell into stunned silence as the feed stabilized. Ambassador Catherine Rains appeared. Older now, her hair touched with silver, but her eyes had not lost their fire. She stood before a backdrop that made every delegate lean forward in disbelief. Behind her stretched a world, a new world. It was not Earth, but it was unmistakably human. Vast oceans glittered beneath sunlight. Towering cities of gleaming alloy and glass rose along coastlines, their designs both alien and familiar. Orbital stations glowed in the skies above and beyond them. Fleets of human starships glided in disciplined formation. A new homeworld, carved from nothing. Humanity had not merely survived exile. They had transcended it. Rain spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of history. You judged us unworthy. You debated our fate as though we were children to be disciplined. You sought to exile us from your halls. But while you argued, we acted. We chose to leave before your sentence could be delivered, because humanity does not ask for permission to exist. We do not wait to be told where we may walk. Her gaze swept across the chamber, and though it was only a recording, every delegate felt the intensity of her eyes as if she stood before them in person. You feared us for our recklessness, but it was only your fear of change. You called us dangerous because we would not be bound by your stagnation. You thought exile would break us? Instead, it freed us. The camera panned for a moment, revealing more of the human world, vast shipyards brimming with construction, colonies stretching across landscapes rich with life, children laughing in schools that blended human and alien architecture alike. Rains. Its voice hardened. Do not come looking for us. Do not seek our new world. If you do, you will find not allies nor supplicants, but a people who remember what you tried to do. Remember this. It was you who wanted a galaxy without humans. Now you have one. The feed cut to black. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates shouted for diplomacy, desperate to re-establish contact. Others demanded fleets be dispatched to hunt for the human world, fearing what humanity might become beyond their control. But beneath the noise, the truth settled in with terrible clarity. The Concord had not exiled humanity. They had exiled themselves from humanity. The galaxy now moved forward without the very species that had bound it together. And out there, beyond their reach, humanity had found a freedom larger than exile, larger than judgment. They had carved out a destiny of their own, and they had left the Concord behind to drown in its regret. For weeks, the council chambers lay heavy with silence whenever Earth's name arose. The gavel that had once struck to seal their exile now gathered dust. Its sound remembered only as the beginning of the Concord's greatest mistake, and in the quiet corners of the galaxy, where whispers traveled faster than light, a single phrase spread from world to world, from soldier to scholar. From traitor to child, they tried to cast humanity out. But it was humanity who walked away, and with every repetition, the fear grew. For if humanity could do this after exile, what would they become in the centuries to come, unshackled, unbound, and beyond the reach of the Concord's fading grasp?